Excellent. I like to record so that we can post this on YouTube, and anyone who did not happen to make it tonight, maybe you RSVP'd, maybe something came up, you know, that kind of a thing.
What's the YouTube channel?
I will get that to you. It is Actualize. Actualize is our sponsor. Actualize is a coding bootcamp. I work there. This is sort of a passion project that was born out of that. Code Co-op is a group for just throwing out all kinds of like tech focused events, mostly coding, but we do sometimes talk about like what different things are going on in the tech sphere. But I'm a software developer. I was a special education teacher. Sherry, I taught in Desterham. And I moved to Chicago from Louisiana many years ago now. And I'm actually a graduate of Actualize. I went to Actualize, now I teach for Actualize. I love it there. It's the best job. But ever since I started working in tech, I just really want people to realize like that you can do it too, you know? So like that's sort of my mission here, and that's sort of what this was born out of. Mike, I see a hand up. What's up?
Do you cover operating systems as well, like Linux and Windows?
We don't in our curriculum, but that is a really great question. We are a fast-paced boot camp. We primarily focus on in-class full stack web development. But so from there we get our OpenAI. Okay, cool. We start talking about we primarily focus during the cohort on using Mac OS. So that's the only operating system that we offer in our class. But that's a really great question. I'm actually still going to ask that. Later at the end, I'm going to drop a survey for y'all because I'd love to get some feedback. And one of the questions is, hey, what kind of stuff do you want to see from us? So if you're interested in talking about operating systems, learning a little bit more, we can absolutely put on an event. We can put on a Code Co-op event.
I don't mean to interrupt, but
No.
I think that Mike is a Zoom bomber.
Oh.
It's Mike Oxlong.
Yes.
And I've seen that in other Zoom calls. It is a double entendre for a male's genital parts.
Okay.
I think I'm not sure, Mike. I don't want to single you out, but I'm just letting the host know to be careful because I've seen that name before, and it is always a Zoom bomber.
Okay. Mike, you got your hand up again.
Hello. Oh, I just want to say that I'm actually named after my grandfather, and yeah, so that's
Okay.
where my name originates from.
That's totally fine. You also asked a very like relevant question. So I don't think in this case, Mike is a Zoom bomber. However,
I would, if I could say so, I would like, I don't even know how you say that name, like Sanji, but like if he could say something maybe relevant to this course, I don't know. That's just
My name
me.
is
I don't want to call
Sanjay.
him out,
I'm
but
listening like everybody else. I do not appreciate that. Please
okay.
stop interrupting.
Thank you. Let's talk about Code Co-op. Okay. Later I will drop a link to the survey because we'd love to get some feedback. And Mike, if you're interested in operating systems and talking about stuff like that, we'd love to hear that. And we would love to be able to put things on like that. Excellent. Cool. Great. So, like I said, my name's Amanda. I'm a developer, and I'm here to talk to you about APIs, right? APIs, which are really cool, very magical. I am personally really into data. I think data is like the coolest. And I love like what you can do with data that's out there. I operate using Chrome. So just as a heads up, I'm on a Mac, I'm using Chrome. I have an extension, I will show you that in just a second, that I use that helps me to get my data looking a little bit cleaner. Because sometimes when we're talking about APIs, when we're talking about APIs, we're primarily talking about data. And when we are looking at data, sometimes that can become really difficult to look at, right? It can become really like difficult to read, and we'll see an example of that in just a second. I'm going to share my screen though, because I have another quick question. How does the web work? Do we know? Totally okay if we don't, because I'm going to be completely honest with you. I had no idea before this, right? Before I learned, I was like, man, that's crazy. I use it so often and I have no idea how it works. Port 80. Okay. Okay.
HTTP.
Yeah, HTTP, right? HTTP is a language, but yeah, absolutely. It definitely works with that. So when I go to, yeah,
Isn't HTTP a protocol? Because
It
I know
is.
that you can basically only execute like the get, post, put, delete.
Yes.
You also got trace and config there.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to talk about that. These are really great questions, are really great answers. Yes. So when I'm going to the web, right? When I talk about like how information moves around, I open a browser, right? Mine takes me to Google. Okay. And then I have this address bar and I type something in here, right? I type something into my address bar. So I don't know, let's say we're going to like a Craigslist, right? I go to Craigslist.com and it pulls up information. But how does my browser know what information to pull back up for me, right? And the answer is when I make those requests, I'm pretty sure I'm screen sharing. Can you all see my screen?
No.
Oh,
No.
really?
No.
Oh, there?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, I see. Somebody else screen shared for a second.
Yes.
Got it. Turned mine off. I was like, I promise I turned it on. Cool. So when we talk about going to a browser, right? I went to Google. That's where I was. I typed in Craigslist here into my URL, my address bar, and it took me here and it knew what information to give back to me, right? So when we think about how the web works, right? Typically, we access it by going to a browser, okay? And the first thing we do is make a web request, okay? So when I typed in my browser here, I said Craigslist.org, right? It took me, it made a web request. This is called our web request. And that can come from any number of different places, right? Typically, we are used to making them from a browser. But that browser can be in a tablet, it can be in a laptop, it can be in a phone, right? There are all kinds of different places. And we think of that small computer, that computer making the request as the client, okay? So the client makes the web request, all right, which is what I did by typing in a URL here, right? And then when I send that request, all right, I get to a place called a server, all right? And a server is just like any other computer, okay? It's optimized to serve websites, right? So typically there's no keyboard, no mouse. Yes, the video will be available today. I will get that to you. If y'all could refrain from screen sharing, that would be great because you're turning mine off. Thanks. Okay, do we see it?
Yeah.
Cool, all right. So we have a server that we hit, right? And has anybody ever like, we've all seen like action movies where they're like, here's the server room and it's just like rows and rows and rows. Thank you, Pamela. I thought it was on, and that's my mistake. I will fix that. Yes, I will be showing you use cases of APIs. We will talk about it, I promise. I just want to make sure this is an intro, right? So I want to make sure everybody's kind of like on the same page and gets like, where's the data coming from, right? So when that server gets the request, it sends me back what's called a response, right? Primarily, that response is going to contain HTML, CSS, JavaScript, right? Other code, and my browser is going to render that for me, right? Craigslist is kind of boring. I don't think there's much, like not a ton of JavaScript happening here, right? It's very simple. But that's what's happening when you hit any URL, right? Your web browser is rendering for you all of that code, okay? In the response, and the browser is responsible for making that response beautiful, right? So that you can see what's going on. HTTP is a very simple and small language, right? It is a protocol. And this is what our browsers and our servers are using to communicate with each other. All right, 1 second. Let me adjust my settings. Did somebody have a hand up?
No, I was just trying to find the chat. I believe HTML is a markdown language. Yeah, I believe it was descended from SGML.
Yes, it is. I'm talking about HTTP, not HTML.
Nerd.
That's okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. You're totally fine. So what, I'm trying to turn on my, yeah, we'll worry about that later. So like we said, we have an HTTP request. We enter our URL, which stands for Uniform Resource Locator. You literally do not need to know that, okay? And when we send our web request, this is what it actually looks like. This is what you're actually sending, okay? So HTTP is our protocol, right? I also have a verb. This is something that I forgot who it was that was saying it, but you were absolutely right. Charles, yeah, talking about, you know, gets, posts, put, patch, all these things, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about that. A get request, the verb get is the one that we use most commonly, right? You actually use all of them pretty regularly, but when you are typing something into an address bar here, this is a get request. This address bar only runs what's called a get request, right? But there are other verbs that we can use. We'll talk about a couple of them, but we'll definitely look at the gets a lot more. Here I've got my domain, right? So everything on Craigslist is at craigslist.org, right? And then I have what's called a path, okay? So the two most important parts of this is the verb and the path. The combination, okay? Because our protocol and our domain pretty much stay the same, right? Have y'all ever been on like Facebook and you're like bumping around and you're just like, you're always on Facebook, right? The URL changes, parts of it like move around, but you're always hanging out on Facebook, right? So these pieces stay the same. What's happening here in your verb and your path dictates what specifically the server should be sending back to you as a web response. Cool. So when I am making a request, okay, I get back a response. And this is what a web response looks like, okay? A web response has a bunch of different pieces in it. Okay. I appreciate y'all's patience. Whoa, whoa.
Like I said, there is Zoom bombers in this class.
Yeah.
Is this what usually goes on around here?
No, I've never had this issue before.
Okay.
Thank you for bringing that to my attention, though. I appreciate that. I don't think Mike is a Zoom bomber, but definitely. While I'm getting my settings configured a teeny bit, why don't we take a second and talk about some of our experience with tech? What brings us in? How did y'all find us? Like, anybody here work in tech? Anybody thinking about working in tech? Sterling, what's up?
Yeah, a friend of mine was just sending me a lot of events that were going on. So I had just recently graduated from a software engineering boot camp, so I'm just trying to do whatever I can to get my first position.
Yeah, that's great. What which boot camp did you go to?
Perscolis.
Nice, very cool. Very cool. Anybody else? Ryan, what's up?
Yeah, hi. I am a self-taught developer. Just started applying to jobs, trying to break into the field as a career transitioner. So
I love that.
figured might as well learn more about APIs.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anybody else?
I'm a product owner and scrum master, and worked in the field in financial services, and now I'm trying to get up to speed on web APIs, microservices, AI, ML, DL. You know, just taking a lot of meetups
Nice.
and talking to people.
I love that. That's very cool. All right.
It's interesting. It's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, it really is. Rochelle, you're next on my screen.
Hi, my name is Rochelle. I'm currently in Resilient Coders with Philly. I'm aspiring software engineer, learning full stack development right now. So I'm just going around trying to like connect with people in Philly. Because I feel like I haven't really seen like a big tech community in Philly. So I really want to learn about what APIs are, and I saw this group was in Philly, so I'm really excited to be here.
Nice, very cool. Excellent. Mike?
Yeah, I'm getting into IT. Right now I'm taking the cybersecurity program through Corsa.
That's
So
very,
that's pretty cool, but like I don't know too much about coding or APIs. Like that's kind of new to me still. So
yeah, for sure. Excellent. All right.
By the way, I
Correct
wanted to
me.
mention that one of the free places I just came across a few weeks ago called Class Central has a lot of free courses on a lot of technology subjects, including certifications. The
Oh,
certifications you have to pay for, but in the meantime, all the coursework is free.
sure. That's very cool.
On, yeah, classcentral.com, I believe it is.
Central.com. Thank you. I will have to
You're
check.
welcome.
Very cool. All right. I'm gonna say this wrong, so please correct me. Is it Puma Sanji?
Yes, that's perfect. Puma Sanji. So I actually work at Geek Squad at my local Best Buy.
That's awesome.
And my manager recently left to join IT. He's been doing it for about 6 months. He's been finding a lot of success in job openings. So he's kind of like my mentor, and I'm just trying to follow in his footsteps. So I'm a little bit more of a beginner. It sounds like you guys are speaking Chinese to me right now, but I'm hoping that maybe through this I will be able to learn a little bit more about the IT and exactly how this works. This is my pilot episode per se.
Very cool. Antonio.
Oh, hello. I'm just curious. I'm a principal cloud architect, and I've done programming, designing data centers and architectures, and I'm just curious. So I joined to find out more.
Cool. Very cool. Thank y'all so much for sharing. I appreciate that. And I appreciate your patience because I have never run into this before and did not anticipate this. So one of the things I always like to share is that being a developer really is a lot about being able to like move on the fly. You know, sometimes you're like, okay, we got to pivot a little bit, right? And that's totally okay. Did I have another hand up? Was there a Rhett? No? Yes? No? Chris, you got a hand up? What's up?
Yeah, I completed coding bootcamp, digital crafts, and somebody told me about meetups, and I just joined all the ones that are about programming. And we learned about APIs, but I was just trying to learn more about it.
Yeah, for sure. Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. And then Priscilla. Hello. Priscilla.
Can you hear me? Sorry.
There you are.
Okay. Yeah. I'm currently employed as a software engineer, so I know a little bit about APIs and web stuff. I'm just here so I can, get additional perspective on APIs.
Very cool. Nice. We're happy to have you. Yasa, am I saying that right?
Perfect.
Excellent.
So my name is Yasa, as you guys heard. I'm a software developer. I specialize in web development, but I'm trying to expand my horizons, learn more about APIs, a little bit more about backend. So I am here to check you guys out. Thank you.
Yeah. And Sterling, what's up?
One last thing. Just wanted to know if you guys or if anyone else in here who's already working, if you guys are hiring for like new bootcamp grads, let me know.
Okay, cool. Good networking throw out. We always tell our grads, like, one of the best things you can do is network. Like, it's such a, especially in the market today, like it's difficult out there, you know, like it's been tough. All right. Can we see my screen again?
Yep.
Cool.
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Nobody else should be able to
Yes.
screen share and nobody else should be able to draw on my screen. So we can dive back in. We were talking about the web response, right? So when you make a web request, you are sending a verb path combination. Okay. And you are getting back this information, right? So we have our status, okay? Up here, we got that 200, okay, right? We're kind of familiar with some status codes, right? There are several. We've got like 404, I'm sure people have seen, right? Where we're like, that's not found. Don't know what that is. 500s, right? Status codes actually mean different things. And if you're ever like, I'm not sure what I'm looking at, you can, oh, it opened on the wrong screen. I have a list of HTTP status codes down here, which is really cool. Some of these are really fun, right? So if you get a 100, it's informational. If you get a 200, it's saying like, yep, we did it, right? Success. And there might be some peripheral information that's coming through here. 300s are if you're getting redirected. 400s mean that you have made a mistake on your end, right? This is fun because if you look down here, code 418 is my favorite one, probably ever. This was part of an April Fool's joke. It says I'm a teapot, and that's literally just like part of the status codes now. It just exists and is hilarious, right? If you get a 500 error back, that means something is going wrong on the server side, right? So when we think about client side errors, it means you have done something kind of incorrect. Maybe you're not logged in and you need authorization to see something. Maybe you're trying to hit a URL that doesn't exist, which is why you're getting that 404, right? But there's all these different things. A 500 means something has gone wrong on their end, right? Server could be down. There's something happening on their end and you're just like, I will just have to try this again later, right? Puma Sanji, what's up?
Hi, sorry to interrupt, but so just for clarity on these errors, are these errors universal throughout the entire web, or is this for only specific programs?
They're pretty universal, right? So what's cool
Okay.
is like you can hit different different status codes at different points in time, right? And we'll have a peek at that in just a bit. But there are definitely times where you're like, okay, I'm gonna like, if you hit something like, there's one really good one. Let's see. Is anybody familiar with the site GitHub?
Yeah.
A little bit.
Okay. So GitHub has, yep. Nice. GitHub has some really great error handling, right? So this is an example of GitHub error handling, right? And it's like, hey, you got back a 400. This is saying this web page doesn't exist, right? This web page does not exist. Okay. They have a 500 if something's going wrong at GitHub, right? They'll be like, oh, we have a problem, right? It's us, but there it is. So there are all kinds of different codes that you can run into, right? But if we go back to looking to our HTTP status codes, did I? No, my goodness. We go
So
back.
just to clarify, GitHub is to see what you can input any code and it will tell you what the error is, correct?
No, GitHub is a site that is a place where we back up code, right? So that is just a site that we use to be able to save code, right? It's for version control. So anytime
Okay.
I'm writing code, I would save it, and I would save it to something called Git on my machine. And then as I go through what's happening in as I go through, I would also back that up to GitHub so that
Where are you from, Pasamanji?
That is not relevant to the conversation.
Hey, excuse me. One quick question.
Yep.
I'm a little bit confused. Are you still expected to be sharing your screen?
Somebody turned it off.
Okay.
I'm back.
Well, I want to let you know.
Thank you. So like I said, this is our web response. We've got our status. There's some headers. This is going to include a lot of information about when was the request made, right? What kind of content are you getting? And then down here, this is the body. All right. This is the body of our request. So the body is typically going to give us HTML, CSS, and it dictates what this page should look like, right? Which is very cool. Sometimes, however, and this is where we're going to get into APIs, we don't get back HTML. Sometimes we just get back data. And this is very cool because if you are a developer, you can see a bunch of different data that you'd like to use for projects across the web. Okay. So let's have an example of one of these. All right. And I'm quite simply just going to go to Google And we are going to look for Chicago speed camera locations, right? I don't like to get tickets in the mail, right? I think that's terrible. So I live in the city of Chicago and I can look at a map, right? This is a web page that is powered by an API, all right? And the API shows me the location of all of these speed cameras in the city of Chicago, right? This is being powered with that, that API. And I can see that API, all right? I can see the API by looking at, let me share my screen again so y'all can see it. By looking at, so this says export, and I can go to this API, all right? It gives me it says, hey, you can look at this map, the data, all right? And this is the API endpoint. So if I go to this endpoint, and we look here at this endpoint, I'm getting data back, right? This is the data. And this tells me where all of these things are. Yes, I can absolutely share the link to, I'll get y'all links to our YouTube channel for sure. Cool. So this is where that is, right? So here's the location, and each one of these, that's called an object, okay, contains information about one of these speed cameras, right? And it will tell me exactly where it is, okay? So I can see exactly where these things are. So here's the address, okay? So I know that is a, Lucas, everything okay? Lucas? Okay. All right.
I think somebody keeps canceling your screen sharing. You should be able to fix it in the settings.
I did, but I would have to leave the meeting and come back in order for it to take effect. So I am just going to start removing people who are doing it. You know, no big deal. Cool. I'm really sorry, y'all. I appreciate your patience. I really do. Like I said, this has never happened to us before. We've never had bombers. Like this, I don't know. Should I feel like honored? Like we're big enough to get Zoom bombers? Like, is that weird? You know? Cool. So basically I'm getting back data. Yeah. I'm getting back data about the things that we are seeing. Okay. Backhanded compliment. Yeah, I know. It's, so this is my data, right? So now I have a list of all of the places that these speed cameras are, which is really kind of incredible, right? There are lots of different places, lots of different APIs, lots of different data that you can find, and you can quite seriously just Google things and have a peek at like all the data that's out there, right? So something that's really cool is that when I go to when I go into like any sort of data that exists, I'm grabbing that. Here we go. I have one saved that I really like. This is public data. It's public domain. And what we are looking at is everybody who is currently employed by the city of Chicago. We know their job titles. We know how much they make. Okay. That's all public domain. These are things that exist, right? And you can Google literally any kind of data, right? We can get weather data. We can get dictionary data. We could get data on sports, right? I'm not a big sports fan, but we could be checking scores. And those things are updated really regularly. And what we can do with that data is we can see, we can build out something like this web page here so that I have a pretty front end that uses accurate data from somewhere else, right? So what I'm able to do is take the data and then build whatever I want on top of it, right? Because the alternative would be for me to go grab all of this data, right? and hard code it into an application myself, right? And this is a lot of data. Okay, look how tiny my little scroller is. So little. Okay. This goes on forever. All right. Something I want to be really clear about is your web requests, while we are typically making them here in our browser, this is what we're typically used to. This is a GET request, right? We said this is always a GET request, but there are many different kinds of requests, okay? Many different kinds of requests. So let's go look at a weather map. I have
a question.
Yeah.
What is meant by this JSON?
JSON, great question. Thank you. JSON is the format of this data.
Oh, that's really.
Yeah. JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. All right. So when we talk about data structures, okay, this is an array and it holds currently 160 items. Each item inside of this array in JavaScript is called an object, right? And what an object is it is a key value pairing, okay? Your value can be all kinds of stuff. In this case right here, this is the key. My value is another object, right? So objects can hold other objects, which is nuts. But then I say, okay, here's my key address, right? And the value is whatever the address is, right? And we can kind of think of this also in terms of like spreadsheets. When you think about data, sometimes you think about it laid out on a spreadsheet, right? And you have columns and rows, okay? So this is like one row of data. Okay, so I'm saying one location. So this is the first one. Okay, and it's at 5509 West Fullerton Avenue. Okay, and then all of my information would go across. That's one instance of a location, right? So this is an object. Okay, and an object is just one instance. It's all of the data associated with one instance. So when we think about data, sometimes, right, it's people. Sometimes our data is people. So one object, one instance is all of the information relevant to Jeffrey Aaron, right? Jeffrey Aaron is one instance of an employee of the city of Chicago, and therefore he gets one row on the spreadsheet, okay? If that's how we're thinking about it. Relational databases are stored in like spreadsheet style. So we get one instance of that person, okay? Mike, what's up? You got a question?
Yeah, just it's a little off topic, but do you guys have any social media accounts by chance?
We do. I can absolutely drop those things in the chat in a little bit as well.
Okay, yeah, no problem.
Remind me. Sometimes it's hard for me to like read the chat and do the talking. And also I'm going to be really transparent with y'all. I'm kind of nervous. I do this every day, all day. This is literally what my classes are like, right? I sit in a Zoom classroom with all my students and I tell them all the time, I'm like, please interrupt me. If you've got questions, I'm here to answer them, right? I don't know what it is about y'all, but you're making me nervous. I think it's the bombers, right? It's the Zoom bombs. Like that's, thank you for your patience once again. I appreciate that. So when we are talking about different APIs and what we can do with them, there are all kinds of things, right? And web requests can come from all kinds of places. Typically, we think of doing them in our browser, right? We are accustomed to doing them inside of our browser, right? We make a GET request to whatever this verb path combination will give us, okay? And this is the data that gets returned. However, when you are working in an application, that is also potentially making web requests, right? There are web requests that can be made from all over the place. Some of my friends who are maybe a little bit more versed in like tech and coding, I'm going to show you something that's a little bit, it's a little bit out there. All right. I'm not going to lie to you. This is my terminal. Okay. And we're going to set up a really simple application. All right. To make a web request. And I'm just going to write a really simple script. I'm going to write it in a language called Ruby. And we're going to see how we can get back data. Okay. Can everybody read my terminal? Okay. Can we all see this? Hello. Right?
Yes.
Cool. Excellent. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to get onto my desktop. And I'm just going to create a file. All right. I'm going to create a file. And the command for that is just touch, right? And I'm going to say it's weather API.rb. RB is just the extension. for me to be able to get that in Ruby. Okay. I'm going to use a text editor called VS Code. Have y'all heard of VS Code?
No.
Okay.
Use it all the time.
Yes.
Yep.
Excellent.
No.
If you've
Yes.
heard of it, excellent. If you haven't, that's okay too. As a developer, day in, day out, what I do is I write code in this text editor. It's called VS Code. It stands for Visual Studio Code. I believe they're owned by Microsoft, right? Pumasanji, what's up?
I'm sorry to interrupt again, but
not
so in the chat there is somebody named Bowery that said and kind of cute NGL, which stands for not gonna lie. I think that might be the Zoom bomber, because obviously that is off topic and it's starting to get frustrating. You're doing great, but I think that's one of them.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you.
That yes, I just realized that's not appropriate and nobody's on that topic, so I'd assume that's what they're doing. Okay, this is very frustrating. Just
Hang
because
on.
I have an accent does not
Yeah.
mean that you can be discriminating against me like this. I'm very sorry. I will join another group. I don't know if this is what usually goes on around here, but I
No,
will
it
join next time.
absolutely is
You have
not.
been doing great. I am sorry, but
trying
that
to
is
find
racist. I
them.
can't do this.
They
You're
changed.
doing great, but I'm sorry. I do have to leave. Please have a
Please
great
stay,
rest of
Pumasanji.
your
You're
thing.
fine. Please stay.
I can't find Bowery. They changed their name. I was literally about to eject them from this meeting. Hang on.
Oh.
Hey, in the chat, her name just went from being a link to being normal text.
Okay, so it looks like they left. Pumasanji, I hope you're still there. Pumasanji? Okay.
He's not, he left.
I'm really sorry to hear that. Yeah, it looks like Bowery left. A Parker is what your screen says. You have a hand up. What's up?
Yes, please, could you please repeat the coding, sorry, the text editor that you're using? I'm trying to understand. Is it just VS Code and you look that up on?
This is called VS Code. It is it's a text editor that I have on my desktop. You don't need to worry about this right now. There are also other things out there that you can use that are a little more accessible if there's not something you have on your screen all the time, right? Which is totally okay. There are things called Atom is one. Sublime Code was one for a long time. Oh yeah, Notepad++ is a good one. If you're looking for something on the web, you can use something like REPL, which is, it looks like this. It's like repl.it, okay? And this lets you start coding. Yeah, we love a REPL.
Just one note.
Yes.
I believe about a year or two ago, Atom was discontinued, and I think they changed it to Pulsar.
Did they? Okay. I haven't used Atom in quite a while, but that's a good note. Thank you.
No problem.
Cool. Yeah, there are all kinds of options. There's also one called CodePen.
And don't forget IntelliJ.
And IntelliJ. There are a lot of them out there. CodePen is cool. If you're trying to use, like, if you're doing HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, you can absolutely start writing code here. And it VS Code has a web version now too. That's fantastic. Yeah, so check that out. I'm just going to dive on in my VS Code just because I have it. It's here. We're going to build this little web API. There are some things that are going to be kind of like deeper understanding, and it's going to get a little weird, okay, especially if you're newer, but please don't let that deter you. And something else I want you to remember is, like, it's new, and that's okay, right? Sometimes, like, we like lose the forest for the trees when we're learning new stuff, right? So we're just going to look at this at a really high level. If there are things you have questions about, though, please feel free to stop me, ask any questions you've got, but let's do it. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to require a gem. All right. This is something that I need to do because I am writing a script, and this is going to allow me to make the web request from this script. Okay. So this is going to run in my terminal. Okay. And I'm going to do that And actually, let's do this. Puts, okay. And this is just gonna say, welcome to Amanda's super cool weather app. So if I run this, all right, and the command to run something in Ruby, a Ruby file is just Ruby and then the name of the file, and it will print this out quite literally to my terminal, right? So that's what I've done. I've said, hey, welcome to Amanda's super cool weather app, which is nice, right? But I want to use this HTTP gem, pardon me, and I want to be able to get data back, right? That's what we're trying to do. So I'm going to set up a variable and I'm calling it response. And my response is going to use that gem, going to spell it correctly, and I'm making a GET request, just like we said before, right? I'm making a GET request. And I'm going to make my GET request to the API, okay? And actually, let's start with, let's call this data app. This is going to yell at me. I didn't give it an argument, but we're going to grab our URL.
Hi, just so you know, you're muted.
I'm having a bit of a coughing fit, but thank you.
Is the API supposed to be for weather or for the employees of Chicago?
I'm going to show it to you with the employees of Chicago really quickly. Excuse me. Just so that we can see some data in our browser or in our terminal before we get started. Okay. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say my response, right, is going to be my response. Okay. And I'm going to say dot parse. All right. Dot parse. And I'm going to have it print out my data. Okay. I want to get that data back. So now it's not data. It's not weather data yet. And I named it weather data because I was getting a little ahead of myself. Apologies. But here's all my information. I made a web request from a script, right? This is all of the data that we saw with the Chicago employees here, right? It's the same thing. And this is the power of making web requests, right? So now let's talk about the weather. I'm going to go to, it's called Open Weather Map.
Hey Amanda, I had a question.
Yeah, what's up?
So that parse function, is that a part of like every like JSON object, or is it?
That is part of when I'm running this gem. So I'm saying I only want part of my the response to come back, because if we get rid of this, and that's a really good question, I actually get back a lot of stuff. Here's my response. There's no data in there. Right? For the Chicago site, I don't need an API key. That is correct. Okay. So we parse it so that we're actually getting back the JSON data. Otherwise, what I'm getting back is the full response, right? And we said the response contains a lot of different things. Cool.
Okay. So the JSON data is part of the web response. Okay, got it.
That is correct. Charles, I don't need an API key for the requests that I am currently making. But sometimes you're right. You do need an API key. But for this one, I said I don't need one, right? This is all free.
Yeah, I just put that in as he'd asked us. I just thought I'd answer it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're absolutely right. And sometimes even when APIs are free, right, there will still be an API key. And when I show you the weather one, I'm going to show this to you with an API key. And a lot of places do that because they want to limit the number of requests that you can make at a certain time. All right. Because otherwise, if I were to write a loop within a loop, right, or make a million requests, right, it would throttle their servers, which would be a problem for them. Okay. So we are going to look at current weather data. We're going to look at the docs. All right. And here we go. Here's some information. in my script, we're going to do the weather. All right. And I'm going to drop this in here. Okay. So now I have a bunch of different things. And this says I've got lat, I've got lon, and I've got a place for an API key. All right. So let's start filling in some stuff because right now this is going to yell at me. All right. It's not going to give me any data. Okay. It's like, you're unauthorized, right? Look, that's a 401 status that I'm getting back. And it's saying you're not logged in, right? There is no API key, so I can't tell who you are. Okay. So let's go ahead and grab that API key. If an app is free, sometimes you can just see it. You can just get one for free. This is a website that gives us one for free. Cool. If we go back to our API docs, actually, this should automatically fill mine in there, I think is what they typically do, which is cool. Nope. Okay. And this also gives you an example of what the data coming out will look like, right? So we'll grab my API key. That's me. Grab our keys. Here it is. All right. So we will change this. And instead of saying API key here, we will drop in our API key. Sometimes when you copy and paste, you got to be really careful because it leaves a bunch of extra weird spaces and that gets wonky. So now I have a different error and we love a different error. As a developer, getting a different error means I'm making progress, right? Things almost never work and that's okay because that's job security, right? So I have got a 401 before because I wasn't logged in, but now that I'm passing the correct API key, it says you are logged in, right? But this is a bad request. And it's a bad request because I didn't tell it what my latitude and what my longitude were, right? So let's put in some latitudes and some longitudes. Let's put our parse back so that we can get some information. Cool. Now it's mad at me. All right. It's giving me a more clear error message. It says, hey, this is the wrong latitude. All right. So let's look at a latitude. Somebody give me a latitude. Or a city, and we can look up the latitude and longitude.
Raleigh, North Carolina.
All right, we're doing it. Raleigh, North Carolina. Latitude. Great. Cool. All right. So I get this backwards all the time. Latitude. Okay. Latitude is 35.78. All right. Latitude is 35.78. And our longitude was 78.63. 78.63. We're going to try this. It's going to get a little weird, but we're going to try it. All right. I have data. Okay. It says the temperature is 272 degrees. What? Is that what it feels like in Raleigh right now?
No.
Okay.
But are we sure we got the right units?
I don't know. Are we?
You know, I would go back and look at the API and see which units they're using.
Absolutely. So when we look at documentation, okay, and we look at weather data or any API data, all right, they'll tell us how to make the call and what that'll look like, okay? So there are parameters that are required, and these are in there. These are required, okay? Then I've got other ones that are not required, but I have units, okay? So I have units of measurement here. So there's a standard, a metric, and an imperial. All right. So,
Whoa.
Yes?
Oh, no, nothing. I was just reading it.
Yeah. So what we are going to do is we're going to add in units, okay, so that we can say, I want this in imperial, right? We're all in the US. Is everybody here in the US? Yeah, we don't mess with the metric system. I don't know about Celsius. I'm not gonna lie to you. Not great at science, not super great at the conversions, math stuff, right? Wish I was, but just not the case for me. All right. So I have question mark lat equals, right? Ampersand. So I can tack on things is what this looks like. And it says, and API ID. Okay. So maybe I can say, and, right? And what they call it? Units, right? Units. And then I have values for that. So I can say and units equals imperial. It may not like the way that I'm passing this, but we'll check. We'll see, right? So now, if we look at this, in Raleigh, temperature is it 31 degrees?
No.
All right.
No, it is. That's
It's-
metric. Because I can remember that 30 on the metric scale was a nice summer's day.
Okay.
So it looks like it's metric.
Okay.
If it is, and then that would make sense outside.
All right.
Oh, by the way, I asked a quick question. Could we go back to the code for 1 minute?
Yeah, for sure.
So I see that I think PP means pretty print to data, but how you get, if you don't mind me asking, how are you getting that? Does we just require HTTP just put the whole namespace of HTTP into the program, or?
So Ruby is a programming language, right? HTTP is the gem that I am using, and I'm saying, hey, make a web request here, and that's what this gem does, right?
Yes.
Then I've assigned a variable called data to just get
Right.
the response. I said, I only want the body. Don't bother me with status codes. I don't need any of the rest of that, right? And then PP, this is something that is in Ruby. And so what we are doing is we are pretty printing. You're absolutely right. Because if I were to go like this and say just print the data, right, a single print, it would smush it all up for me like this. So I use pretty print so that we can just make it a little more legible, right?
So is it a standard command in Ruby, or is it a library function in the standard library?
It's part of Ruby. I'm not, it's different in different languages. So like if you were using JavaScript, you could console.log, or, you know, there are different ways, but Trice asks a really good question. Does it make any difference if you don't have a negative in front of the 78? Yes, it does. Why would I put a negative in front of the 78? Could you elaborate on that for us? It's a really great question.
I think because they had a negative on Google. I don't know. Can double check, but I think on the result they had a negative.
It does have a negative here. I looked here and it didn't have the negative, but that's a really good point. So,
That is good. Yeah.
Charles, you had a very good observation, and you said 30 could be correct, right? It could be 31 degrees outside if we're using metric. But we know that what we tried to do, right, was to give it to us in imperial units. So sometimes when we are making requests, we got to kind of stop and go, is this actually the data that I want? Like, is what I think I'm pulling the data that I actually want? And I might be saying that right. Is it? It doesn't say the right city name. Oh, Pamela, that's a really good observation. What does the city say? Where am I looking? Do we know? Yeah, right? I can't pronounce that. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know where that is, right? This is the name of the city. Okay. That's not where we're looking. So because the latitude and longitude are west, right? Here, okay, we said this is 78 west, right? When we think of a globe, we are going to clear the terminal in just a second, Avi. I'm going to show you a cool trick. But I love that you said that because it says west, right? That's actually a negative. So yeah, down here, there's a negative 78. So let's go ahead and fix that and see if we can't get the correct data. Because right now, I'm not even looking at Raleigh, right? I thought I was, but I'm not. Okay?
Believe it or not, it was the weather report was actually pretty close to what's outside.
Yeah. All right. So if I say clear in my terminal, this clears everything out, which is really great. I can also do that in my program. I can say system clear, right? Like this, and that will automatically, every time I run this, will do that. Cool. So clears it out. Boom. Am I looking at Raleigh? Now the name says Wake.
Yes.
It's Wake County, North Carolina.
Exactly.
Got you. Okay. All right. All right. So is it 70 degrees in Raleigh?
I would say so.
Okay. All right. Avi agrees. Avi's like, yeah, I'm in Raleigh too. Looks good. So this is what an API allows us to do. We can pull the data and we can take this and use it to power whatever we want to. Okay. I can drill down into all of this right? I can ask somebody, you know, hey, what city do you live in, right? What, where do you want to see the data for, right? And I can interpolate in, actualize, Tara, and I will make sure I get that to y'all before. Thank you, Brian. Any part of what you've done or received a microservice? That's a really good question, Paul. So kind of, I think what I've received is part of a microservice. So when we think about microservices versus monoliths, right? I am using somebody else's backend, somebody's API, their data to power my front end, okay? When you go to a browser, all right, any browser, and you're looking at something, this is a front end, right? I'm interacting with a user interface and it's powered, right? Depending on what it is, probably powered by an API, some sort of backend information, right? So this map generates all of the information based on this endpoint of this API, right? And anytime this data gets updated, these dots get updated, right? So if you build the front end, okay, and in this case, this is sort of my front end. It's ugly, right? How many of you are like, let me just go look for the weather report in my terminal, right? Probably none, and that's okay, right? Charles is like, actually, this is how I get my weather, right? But if I wanted to, I can use this API to build my own weather application. And many weather applications are built on other APIs, right? Do y'all remember Dark Sky? It was a really cool like API that like doesn't exist anymore. I'm sorry, the app doesn't exist anymore, but there's still an API. And that data continues to update and other applications use that data to power what they're doing, right? So I can say, here's all this data. And as it changes and updates, every time I make the request, I get up-to-date data, right? I don't have to be responsible for managing that data, which is really cool. Okay. Any other questions right now? Let me check the chat because I'm really bad at looking at that sometimes. Charles, thank you for hitting that swagger question. Cool. Oh, right. Nice. Excellent. Cool. I will also, good call. I will also update the meetup group so that you have the recording. Yes. Thank you. Y'all killing it. Have a good night, Tara. All right. So by taking this data, I can do whatever I want with it, right? I have the power to build something. Like I said, this is technically a front end. It's a user interface because I'm a user and I'm interfacing with this, right? I'm making the request, okay? And I'm hitting this. So if I go back here, I can ask a user, like, where do you live, right? Where do you live? And I can say, I can update this so that it allows me to look at specific places. So I can say, I can have it ask, where do you live? Right? Which sounds a little bit creepy, but there it is. All right. And then I will have the terminal get that information from the end user. I'm using Ruby. So in this case, that is a gets.chomp. Okay. I'm going to take in whatever the end user gives me, right? I'm going to say, here's what I want to get. Okay. So I'm going to use this gets.chomp and I'm going to say, I want to assign that to a variable. Okay. So we're going to have the end user enter what they are going to give me. Okay. So I'm giving it information and then I am getting back what they say. All right. And I'm going to assign this to a variable and I'm going to call that city. All right. So city is going to be equal to gets.chomp. So it will prompt me to put in information. And just to give you an idea of what this looks like, we will pretty print out the city and I'll get rid of this for now. And we'll just say First it clears, it asks me where I live, right? We said I live in Chicago. And then it prints back what that variable is, okay? I can also interpolate in that variable. This API I've worked with many times before. I can put in latitude and longitude. I could write code to say, hey, look up what the latitude and longitude of every city is. There's also another variable that I can use, another parameter called Q. And Q is like, I think it stands for query in this case, but the API, the people who wrote the API get to decide, right? And they'll tell me whatever it is they want it to be. And I'm just going to interpolate in the word city, okay? So whatever that value is for city is what I'm going to pass in here, all right? So I'm passing in the city, okay? And I'm going to get back the data, all right? And the data should belong to wherever my my user tells me they want it to go, right? Does that kind of make sense? Everybody, yeah. Any questions so far? Check in the chat. Cool. Definition of microservice. Microservice is different pieces of an application. So if I build a front end for something, okay, the front end is a microservice that connects to another microservice that puts together, right? To make a full app. Yeah. Made up of services that interact. That's a really good explanation, Charles. Nice. Nice. Jerome, everything okay? Okay. Ah, okay. Sorry about that.
I hope they don't think it's me.
Charles is not the troll. Charles is very involved. Kevin, what's up?
So quick question on the how you put the city in there.
Yeah.
Does the quotation marks around that URL not convert that into text? Or how does that work?
It does. Absolutely. I made a typo. Good call. Yeah. So if y'all were my students and this was my class, I'd be like, is this going to work? And you'd be like, yes. And then I would do it and it would be broken. And you would be like, no, it doesn't work. You're absolutely right. I made a mistake here. We need to interpolate in this, this variable, right? Because you're right. I have the quotes, right? So it's reading it as part of the URL. It's reading it as the part of this string, right? A string is a data type that's in quotes when we're talking about Ruby in particular, right? But if I wanted to interpolate in, right, I would use these curly braces, and right before the curly braces, I would also use this little pound sign. So now that looks different, right? And you can tell that that's a variable. Great question, Kevin. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's one of the other fun things about taking my class. You get to watch me make typos all the time. That's the other reason I'm like, please interrupt me, right? Okay, so we live in Raleigh, right? And here's our Raleigh weather data. Look at that. All right, it's getting colder there. It's getting colder as we speak, getting colder, right? So if I run this again, it will ask me again, where do you live? And I can say Chicago, all right? And now I'm looking at Chicago data. And here in Chicago, it's 74 degrees. So now this is dynamic, but it is using the API to power the data that I'm getting back, okay? Does that kind of make sense to everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent, great.
Also, just one quick note. I seen this down here. I think it might be good to point out. You got COD, which looks like the HTTP status code because it's 200.
Oh, down here? Yeah, it looks like they've included that as part of their response, which is pretty cool. I'm not mad about that, right? When we go back to the API and the docs, right? Because you can look at all kinds of different documentation, and truly it is whatever they decide to give you. So this is an example response, all right? And they said, all right, we'll give you the coordinates, okay? So here are my coordinates, right? I gave them Q, they gave me back coordinates, that's fine. And it says, here's your weather, this is an ID, all right? They'll also tell you the conditions. Yeah, and it looks like down here, it looks like you're right. I'm not entirely positive, but I think COD does mean like, hey, you got a 200 code, which is nice, right? Because that means I know it's working, okay?
And also you can use it in an if statement.
Yeah, exactly. You absolutely can. So I could say, if I get back anything other than a 200, right? If this is not a 200, then maybe write this instead, like, oh, we can't find that place. Sorry, right? But yeah, there's a lot of different things I can do now that I can pull through this data. Cool. I'm going to share some lists of some APIs with you, which are pretty cool. There's a giant list of APIs. And I like to sometimes when I'm thinking about like, hey, what do I want to build, right? What's a project I'd like to do? I like to just go look and see what's out there, right? What do I have? So there's all kinds of different, I have some directories here too. So this is nice. You can click on this and it'll take you to a bunch of APIs, right? Sometimes you've got like all kinds of different stuff, right? These are art. There are calendar APIs. There are ones for like cats and dogs, right? You can find some, these look more, here we go, fun and games, right? Food and drink. Open brewery, that's one that there's an app, a really popular app that uses that, and I can't remember the name of it. But like there are all kinds of applications published using data from somewhere else, right? So this is pretty cool. You have the power to create whatever you'd like, and you can take that information and create an app on top of it, right? That way you're not responsible for the data, okay? Maybe you want to do, this is another list. So this is GitHub. This is where we were talking about earlier. There's some, this is where we can save our code, right? Versions of our code. But this has another good list of, let's see, animals. Let's do animals. I'm gonna look at animals, right? Cat facts, daily cat facts. This is fun. Okay. Maybe on my website, I'm like, I just want to give people cat facts at the top of my app, right? So I can start developing. Cool. Base URL for all endpoints. Okay. Retrieve and query facts. Get user data. Let's do facts. So let's go here.
Hey, excuse me for 1 second. Could you go back for 1 second?
Back where?
Just go back to the other screen and go, yeah, and go all the way. Go back one more screen to the main screen.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I thought I saw anime on here.
Oh, you probably did. Here. Anime.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Did somebody get that? Somebody's asked about anime before, an API for that.
Beautiful. Yeah, there's anime. Absolutely. There are all kinds of APIs. Here, I'll drop these links for y'all in the chat so that you have them.
Are they all free that you've been listing?
So the ones that I've been messing around with, yes, these are free. Okay. This list is free. This list is free. There are some that you may need an API key, right? And that was what we did with our weather API here, where I said, I just passed it like this, right? You may need to pass an API key. Some of them don't require any authorization at all, which means you don't need an API key, right? But when you're looking for things, yeah, maybe you want to build an anime app. Maybe you want to build, whatever. It can literally be anything, right? Currency exchange, all kinds of stuff. Let's see. I've been talking about sports a lot, which is fun because, again, not a big sports person. But okay, information about specific games like the NFL and stuff. Yeah, I don't know. Squad. Oh, these are about soccer. And NBA. There we go. Let's look at NBA. Okay. So this is data about the NBA. Okay. And I can keep track of, I could build something on top of this API so that I can see specifically what's gone on, right? So this is the URL. And if I go here and I make a GET request here, right? Oh, it says I need an API key. Just kidding. It didn't. Oh, there it is. Sign up for key. That's why. All right. So that one needs a key. I'm not going to sign up for the NBA because I'll never use it, right? Football. I don't know. Yeah. If you are looking for whether or not, this will tell you, this column here says auth, okay? And it's telling you whether or not you need an API key, all right? Axolotl, this is cute, right? It's just pictures of axolotls. And this one does not require an API key, all right? This changed. Okay. This is out of date, but still a pretty decent list of stuff. Okay. Let's go back to animals because there are some fun ones. Cat facts. Right. So I've got cat facts. Okay. We said we can go to our docs. All right. So this is our base URL, right? Remember we said we've got our protocol, we've got our domain. Okay. And then from there, we have endpoints. Okay. So get/facts, okay, would be like me going to here/facts, and that's going to give me data about kitties. Okay. Mary Todd Lincoln told somebody that, you know, Abraham Lincoln's hobbies were cats. So that's pretty neat, right? But I can grab this data and I can pull whatever I want to, and I can use it for whatever I'd like to build. Cool. Let me check the chat. Tammy, thank you. Have a good night. Is there a way to get an API from a private website? Is it Treese? Montrese? You're absolutely right. Web scraping. We want to be kind of careful with that because we want to be ethical, right? You can web scrape. Sometimes you want to be kind of mindful of I've definitely seen people do it. Yeah, absolutely. Prasad, I actually teach people how to build web APIs. That's part of my job. That's a much bigger course than one demo evening, but there are definitely things out there, and I can certainly do some poking around for you.
Yeah. What's the ethical reason behind scraping websites? I mean, it's the information presented to you.
Some data is protected, right? So we want to be mindful of that. When we are talking about like the ethical part of it is if somebody wants to charge you for using an API and you go, I'm just going to scrape it and that's fine, right? It's sort of like a gray area. Okay.
So for any website where you're not charged, it's okay.
I think probably, but I would just double check. And like also, you know, it's hard to give like a definitive answer one way or the other for anything, right? We think about like, I don't know, what is the website? Am I looking at my hospital records? You know, does it violate HIPAA for me to scrape things there? You know, it's kind of what is the data, right? And yeah, absolutely. Teresa's right. As long as it's public information and it's free, then yeah, you shouldn't have any problem with it. Yeah. I had a student. Yeah, exactly, David. Scraping from Bank of America could probably get you into some trouble. Yeah. Very cool. Pamela, thank you for sharing those.
I do it one morning. If you ever go on Udacity, I would use something like what is Udemy or Udacity? No, I think it's Udemy. I would use Course RA and Udacity. The reason why Udemy uses DRM and it makes it hard to take screenshots. And let me use it this way: I think you're copying the page, but when you're dealing with computer science and mathematical programs, it's sometimes easier to take a screenshot so you can place it in your PowerPoint.
Absolutely.
Taking notes. So yeah, but they use DRM and you can't take screenshots anymore.
Okay.
So that's why you don't use them anymore.
Oh, this is getting very evolved. People are getting very, like, there are different ways to protect data and different, Hussein, I am getting data from an API. This is me getting data from an API. When we talk about web scraping, yeah, we're scraping the data. We're grabbing data from a regular web page. So rather than being like, yes, I can make a web request and here's my data, you could quite literally go to, I don't know, foodnetwork.com, right? And you can scrape data to build basically this object, right? This JSON data, the same thing. And you'd say, this is what my key is, and the value is whatever I got off of that website, whatever I'm pulling down from what's there, right? Carlos, ChatGPT is, I will say this, ChatGPT is useful to an extent. All right. It's machine learning. It's based on machine learning. So it is taking in information every single time that someone uses it, and it is learning from what it is doing. So when we think about that, right, if everybody has access to it, the tool is only as good as what it's being taught, right? So sometimes it's pretty spot on. Sometimes it doesn't really know what it's doing, right? And the more that we use it, I think the worse it gets a little bit. Like AI is very cool. There's been a lot of really cool developments in AI in the last couple of years, but it might. I don't know. All I'm saying is I personally don't think that I'm going to be out of a job anytime super soon because of AI is all. Like, I think it's something we're going to learn how to like integrate into our day-to-day, right? There are ways to use it that are beneficial to us, but I don't think it'll ever replace us. Exactly, Brian. It's an assistant. Yeah, it's a tool. I imagine when the internet first came around, you know, people were like, what do we do with it? We just use it, right? It doesn't replace me. It just gives me more options for how to do my job. Cool.
Yeah, but this was different. The internet was actually a dumb tool. AI is perceived as smart. Whether you think it's smart or not, it's perceived as smart. The internet was considered a dumb tool.
Sure. But I think that's just because it's new and flashy, you know? And yeah, David, anything?
No, it is actually pretty good. I've used it and like I was impressed by some of the things that spit it out.
Okay. Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I used it to solve a program in Antler. It's a Lexiac a few nights ago.
Okay. Cool. Thank you, Mark. New to API testing, interested into learning more about it. And Postman. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's a study group, but I'd be happy to show you something. I use a tool called Insomnia, which is similar to Postman, and I can show that to you. So when we talk about API testing, when I am looking in my browser, the only web request that I can make is a GET request, right? However, if I were to use Insomnia, and there are a bunch of other tools, there's one called HTTPy, there's one called, I have a bunch of stuff going on here, look at me. There's one called, there's Insomnia, there's Postman, there's all kinds of stuff, right? So this is me. Oh yeah, I have to update. I haven't used this in quite a while. SOAP UI, yeah, there's all kinds of stuff. So we can use different tools, and this, like I said, out of date. So we're going to use HTTPy, .io. Yeah.
Is this free?
Yeah, these are all free. This is a there's a desktop app, but you can also use the web app, which is what I'm going to do because it's just right here. And that one's up to date and I don't have to worry about updating my stuff, right? So if I go here, I can make any kind of web request. So if I go here, all right, I say get, and I want to make a GET request, I can go to www.google.com and check it out. There's Google, right? So this is me saying, here's my web request. Okay, here's my response. Here's the headers. Okay, all that stuff that we said was part of our response, right? There it is. And then it gives me back all this HTML. This is the app showing me what the HTML looks like. That's the code. And you can literally do this on any website on the internet, right? You can just go and you can see all of their source code. It's there, right? In the wrong hands, I think you're right, Brian, or David. It was David who said it. In the wrong hands, any technology can be dangerous, right? But this is Google, okay? I can also make other requests. We said that there were different kinds of requests. Delete is a request, right? And I could say, delete google.com, right? Google's not going to let me do that, right? They're like, no, Amanda, that's not in the list of things you can do. So when we talk about testing an API and we talk about getting stuff, right? And trying to make different kinds of requests, the person who builds the API has full control over what they allow the end user to do, right? So Google said, no, this is inappropriate. You cannot delete Google. That's not allowed. All right. Fine. Okay. But maybe I wanted to delete an instance of something, right? I could definitely do that. Not in Google because I don't have the power to do that. I'm not logged in, right? There's different levels of things that we can kind of like allow people to do based on what we are. Carlos, it's scheduled to end at 7:30. That's in Central Time. So we have about 8 minutes left. Yeah, exactly. I can't delete Google. I rely on it too much. It's super important. Excellent. Cool.
Wait, Amanda, so this website is for like testing an API that you're building?
Yeah,
Is
you
that
can
like what
test.
the use of it is?
Yeah, you can test an API that you are building, right? Or you can test, and I can give you an example. This is something that I built for work. I'm gonna CD into my, I made a cookbook. Okay, this is a cookbook API. And when it's built in Ruby, it's on Rails. I can start my own server. Okay. And when I start the server, what that does is it allows me to go to a locally hosted page, right? And this is me being on Rails. Okay. Inside of this application, I built different places that you can go to. Okay. So if you look at my routes, okay, this is all the places that I said you can go. All right. Starting a server means that I am receiving web requests and I will be sending back web responses, kind of like we saw earlier, right? So I have different things that I allow an end user to do. All right. I said you can get recipes, right? So we know this is a get request. That's my domain. And I can say get recipes, right? I'm going to include .json because I need that. And then I can see, look, this is data that I put in here. Some of it's a little bit silly, right? I was like, we're going to make, I don't know, pizza, mud pie. That's it. And I was like, that's what we're making. But this is data that I created, right? This is data that I allowed people to access through what I built, right? It's localhost because I haven't deployed this anywhere. Yeah, absolutely. So you can develop web APIs, and I could take exactly this and I can deploy it using something like a Cloud SDK. I can use Amazon Web Services. There's also there's one called Heroku. There's one called Render. Like there are all kinds of different places. That's totally okay. The server is just the place that receives the web request. Yeah, yeah. API is running. It's a running program. That's it. So when I turn on the server, I'm saying I'm accepting requests. Okay. So that's here. And now that I have this on, I can go back to HTTP and I can make a delete request, right? This is to something I built because I said I'm allowed to delete one of my recipes. Okay. And it has to be, I have to give it an ID. So let's go back to our data and let's look at it because I don't remember what any of my IDs are. 6. We're going to delete corn, right? So I'm going to delete from localhost HTTP localhost 3000 /recipes / we said 6, right? .json. All right, I'm going to delete that. And what that's going to do, oh, I misspelled localhost. Let me grab this. Beep. Beep. There we go. Recipes /6. Oop. All right. Oh, you can't do it on the web because I'm making a localhost request. That makes sense. So I have to open in the desktop app, which I'm pretty sure I have. I don't know. Don't worry about it. Yeah, so thank you so much for being here. I am going to drop a survey for y'all now because, like I said, I would love to get some feedback from y'all, and I want to make sure I'm being mindful of our time together. Again, thank y'all so much for being patient and bearing with me through some of our weird technical things, some of our weird Zoom bomb situations. You know, like it got a little wild there. Normally, I don't have these sort of issues, but I appreciate you. And I'm going to drop this survey now. Ooh. That's my dog. Her name is Scout. Right. Cool. And I'm going to grab this link. We'll shorten this URL. Great. And in the chat, to everyone in meeting, if you wouldn't mind filling this out, I would really appreciate it. Yes, I'm going to teach additional classes. There is the meetup page. Feel free to check us out there. I'm also gonna shoot out, that's part of what this form is too. Would love to get some information from y'all. If you're interested in like hearing more about what we've got going on, I'm trying to start a newsletter for this. I thought it would be really cool. My colleagues and I take turns hosting events. We're getting more stuff on the calendar very soon. But yeah, would love to have y'all come hang out.
You know what? A good use of ChatGPT might be to put the information that you want in the newsletter and see how it does formatting it.
Oh, that's a good idea. I might try that.
Hey, I got 2 quick questions for you, if you don't mind, since we're at the end.
Not at all.
Question number 1, why did you choose Ruby?
It's just what I have most recently been working in, honestly.
Okay, question number 2, do you know about YAML?
Yes.
Okay, why do you think it hasn't overtaken JSON?
I think honestly, there are just different situations where things are make more sense. You know, when I talk to developers, and especially new developers that I'm teaching, there's a lot of kind of like back and forth where we're all very much like, hey, you know, what's the best way for me to do this? And the answer is it depends, right? What are you trying to accomplish? And what tool is going to do the best thing for you, right? So when we think about like building a house, right? You wouldn't do it with just a screwdriver, right? That's not going to help me to, you know, put my nails through the wood, right?
Yeah, but I was thinking that because it seems like JSON has more functionality, and it's not the same thing as it seems. YAML is more functionality, and it seems that. And what I'm really curious is about. And you know, you got libraries for each. I assume you got libraries for each because I know you got for JSON. You must have it for YAML, and it should, you know, it should be able to create an object from either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And I was just curious if you, what have you heard about why the world hasn't shifted to YAML?
Sure. From what I've understood, JSON is just typically it's easier to like make compatible with many different things. JSON is basically just strings, right? The data is just big blobs of strings, so it's easy for any language to work with it. So it's easy to make it compatible for more things, you know?
That does make sense.
Yeah. I love that y'all are like trying to connect on LinkedIn with each other and stuff. This is fantastic. Y'all, thank you so much for joining me this evening.
Well, we look forward to our next one.
Yeah. Any other questions before we break for the evening?
I have one question. It just came in. When is your next event gonna be?
Actually don't have anything on the calendar right this minute, but if you fill out that survey form and just mark that like, yes, hey, I would like to receive more information, we'll definitely get you on our mailing list. Cool.
Your survey is it in the chat?
Yeah, I'll drop that link again because I think it got buried a little bit. Here we go. I may have misplaced the server. That's okay. That's all right, Brian. Oh, survey. I do have a LinkedIn. I will get that to y'all. I thought you were making a dev joke, Brian. I was like, ha. Oh, I also, yeah, okay. Here is my LinkedIn, and should have just rolled with it. I would have been like, haha, haha. I was. You didn't have to tell me. All right, so that's my LinkedIn, and that is the survey again for those of you who misplaced it or your servers. Honestly, Brian, I'm not great at typing either. Don't feel bad. Especially when people are watching me, and that's literally what I do for a living. I'm always just like, y'all, I don't type so good. It's okay. If you want to get better at it, just have like 60 of your closest friends watch you. Yep. Yeah, that happens to me too. Sometimes it's the other way around and my fingers just keep going and my brain is like, I don't even know what we're doing anymore, you know? All right, I'm gonna stop this recording.